Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote. This is a weekly show where we introduce you to creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from any and all corners of the universe. We find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of And I Quote channel, and our guest on this episode is indie writer extraordinaire Ben Sanford is here with us. Hello, Ben. How are you today?
Hey, Ryan. How you doing?
Doing well, good sir. Now, if you have any questions for Ben Sanford as we go throughout the course of this episode of And I Quote, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. We're going to be monitoring that as we go throughout the course of this program. And do not forget to like and share this with every single person that you know. And if you're joining us live or what is known as a replay, we thank you so much for being with us. With all that out of the way, Ben Sanford, what would you say were some of your favorite books or writers growing up?
Oh, growing up or when I got older, it's two different things, right? I guess when I was a kid, I loved The Hobbit. I loved J.R.R. Tolkien. But I was probably more into comic books and movies when I was younger. Star Wars, of course, Planet of the Apes, the 1969 version. And I'd have to say probably the one TV show that really influenced me more than anything else was the original Battlestar Galactica. I didn't really appreciate the new one. I liked all the things I appreciate from the old show. It's the camaraderie, the family environment, the action, and the first season of Buck Rogers. All those things were big influencers with me when I was growing up. And probably a lot of those things influenced my writing. As far as cartoons go, it was probably there was a show called Flash Gordon. It's kind of very similar to the movie that was made in 1980. That cartoon, because it was a serial each week, it was like, had a story, a continuation from week to week, and that was a big influence on me too. Comic books, probably G.I. Joe, Fantastic Four. Those were all big influencers with me. As I got older and I started reading, I only read a few fantasy series. One was probably The Sword of Truth with Terry Goodkind. That was a big influence with me. I hear a lot of people talk about Wheel of Time, but I had not read that yet. But those are probably the most, and maybe military history. A lot of military history I've read. As you can see, that's a big influence in my books.
Oh, that's really good stuff, man. I thank you for sharing that with us. You actually just answered like 3 questions in one, so I'm impressed. I guess, later on, I was going to ask you what were some of your favorite movies or TV series growing up, but you already answered it. So well done. We've covered 3 bases in the span of 2 minutes. I'm very impressed by this guest, ladies and gentlemen. We'll bring him back someday too. But what made you decide to become a writer yourself?
It's funny because I was not very good at English when I was a kid. I was really bored in English class because these are the stories they give you to read, which were like very. I know they weren't very exciting to me. I got bored easily in English class. But when I was a kid, me and my friend we would play this game we had this basement where it was like a unfinished basement with a lot of stone floor, and we would throw these a blanket up in there and let it land, and that'd be like an island. And we used these tiny little wrist pieces as men, and we have these different islands around the entire basement. We play this little game with some of the characters are now later in my book, and as things evolved, that story just started to grow in my mind. And when I was in, I think, 7th or 8th grade, I wrote a story, which is on this whole genre, the Chronicles of Arax. And then it was only 30 pages long, it was very, childish. But that story stuck with me. So in high school, I wrote the first, which is now books 1 and 2 into one book. The writing was very, very poor. But I kept going with that story through college. And then I was like, I need to go instead of finishing the story, I need to go back and rewrite it now that I have my better writing ability. And then I went back and I rewrote it. And then when I put it in for publication, they said it was too long. So I had to take the first book and break it in half. And that ends up being book 1 and 2 of Chronicles, which is the first one is of War and Heroes. And the second one is the Siege of Corel. So I had to break that in half, and then ended up having to break book 2 in half. And I was still in the process of writing book 3, which is now books 5, 6, and 7. So the story just sort of grew from there, and is influenced by so many different things in my life and experiences and people I've met. Um, but yeah, that's where I got the beginnings. Playing in the basement when I was 10 years old with my friend, playing a make believe game with a bunch of little armies, like little pieces like that, and that's where it started.
Oh, well, I can dig that, good sir. And that's that's really good stuff. So much for being a person or a writer of few words, because the one book became two, two became six, seven, and then you had to split them and cut them down because people were like, "Ah, this is too much material. Split it up a little bit." But I understand that. What would you say are some of the biggest rewards about being a writer?
The greatest reward, more than anything else, is if people love it. If people love your story and see, because when you write something, you're like, I keep thinking this sounds just awful, and then you go back and you sit on it for a few days. You go back, oh, that doesn't sound so bad, and then but you don't really know until somebody else reads it. And then I've had a lot of positive feedback with these books, and people really love the characters. Um, and the problem is, I think the biggest problem when you have a long series is the first book is your first thing you write, and it's probably your worst book as far as the quality of writing, the story. And the more I look at book one, I'm always fearful of people, because you know, like book one, no one's going to read book two. And I look back in book one, I'm like, oh, it's just so horrible. And sometimes I get people feedback and people love it. And I'm like, and they do? Well, I guess the problem is with the first one, I had rewritten it so many times and I had read it so many times because I had to do all the rewrites as I redo things. And it's just, you get sick of it. You can, the most, if you have chocolate ice cream, you love chocolate ice cream, you have it every day from lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and you'll get sick of it pretty quick. And that's how I am with my first book in my series. It's just, so that's a love-hate relationship I have with book one. But the greatest reward is if people love it. That's the best. That's the best high you can get.
I can totally agree with you on that front. On the flip side of the coin, though, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a writer?
My writing ability. I was a C student in English in high school, and it's funny because the things that I love, I always do well, and the things I don't do well, I really don't want to do them. So it's kind of a pushback. I love stories. I've always loved stories, but as far as the mechanics of writing, um, it's very challenging because it's a very dry subject. So you have to have something exciting to make it fun. Um, when I look at writing, there's a lot of times a lot of rules of English that I might violate, but sometimes the story sounds better when you say things a certain way. Um, and trying to make, and also the other thing I think you struggle as a writer too is trying to turn things from passive to active writing. If you keep using passive, which is like past tense, you can make any topic boring, even if it's exciting. And if you take something and make it more active writing, you can make it more, make it flow better. And sometimes you have to move. And the other problems you have to do is you have to take words that you have to find different ways of saying the same thing because there's a lot of repetitive action. And if you keep saying the same thing over and over again with the same verbs and that it's very announced, it doesn't flow right when people are reading it. So when people are reading it, you want them to just as it flows naturally through the paragraph and not have them, cringe. There's a few words I use that drives my wife nuts that I have to. So I always keep that in consciousness. Like it's funny when I'm doing the Iraq stories. There are people from Earth there and people from this fantasy world. So it's a combination of sci-fi and fantasy both. And I try to use a certain way of writing and dialogue for the people who live there, and I have a separate one from the people of Earth. So the people of Earth are sort of like how we are, how you would like expound to things, and how you would phrase things. Where the people of over there have a different way of, like maybe a higher way of communication, like you think of like high medieval Old English and things like that. You're trying to use a super way of speaking, and so when you use those words, sometimes it's some people drives them crazy. But I try to keep things separate.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Uh, and I do thank you for sharing that with us. Once again, this is, and I quote, with indie writer Ben Sanford on this episode. Do not forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions, let us know in those comments or let us know in the chat. And if you're joining us live or what is known as a replay, we thank you for being with us. What advice would you give to aspiring writers out there?
I think before when you have it's always having an idea for. I know sometimes it's hard to say where you're going to get your inspiration for your story, but whatever your inspiration is, have a sense of where you want it to end. because I think the biggest failures I think in writing have been that you didn't know how you wanted to end it from the very beginning. Like if you have an idea, I have two different series going on. The other one's called the Freeborn Saga, and that one I have to finish up as soon as I'm done with Iraqs in the next few months. But with that one, an idea while I was in the middle of writing Iraqs, that idea just popped in my mind, and I actually wrote the last 5 chapters of the first book were the first chapters I wrote. And I also knew how it was going to end in the long run. And then I went back and I already had some things popped in my mind about the backstory, and I filled in. So the rest of it is all leading up to it. So that way you have a tighter plot from beginning to end of book 1. And then you have an idea of where the whole series is going to. And the other suggestion I have is when you're writing your story is do not be a slave to your overall plot. In other words, I've had different characters die or live based upon how the flow of the story went. So I have a general idea of how I want it to go, but when you're writing to make it feel natural, you're going to find that sometimes when two characters meet, and they usually have to meet because you want them to exchange. They have to say character A and character B meet, and they have to exchange some information. But to make it sound natural, what was the last time they saw each other, and what should the conversation begin? And then you got to have that information come out naturally. And sometimes other things will, as the way the story has gone, has influenced what's the dialogue, and it sort of takes on a life of its own. And sometimes you have to go with it. Sometimes the story will take you in a direction you didn't really intend, and then you may have to change your end plot. You have an idea of how it's going to go, but sometimes you have to. Instead of going straight over the mountain, you got to go around it and follow the road that's taking you on. And the other thing I would suggest writers to do is when you're doing dialogue is you need to become an actor. And what I mean by an actor, there's a difference between writers and actors, but I'd like to say like some of the feedback I've gotten back is my dialogue. People like my dialogue, especially in the later books. Is you need to become that character. Like you need to. It takes me a very long time to write a page, and I'll sit there and I'm like, okay, I need to become this character. Who is this character? Become out of yourself, leave who you are, and become this character. It is whether it's somebody who's a blacksmith working all day, or a lady who's a seamstress, or a king, or somebody who's been a general, a colonel, whatever it is. Whoever your character is. Put yourself in that character and think of what their backstory would be and what would be your opinion of things. And then your dialogue will sound more natural and believable.
Very good pointers. Very good pointers. Kind of reminds me of something that was said many years ago on a piece of media. This was in a television. I know television shows, a lot of them are fictional, but they still have characters. It's still important. Your characters are only as good as the writing. This one character said to another, she says, sometimes our destiny takes us places we don't want to go.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that all works and how it kind of brings things to a certain degree full circle. I do want to ask you about this here. So if someone is you're meeting someone at a table, at a booth, convention, whatever, or you bump into what is known as an elevator pitch. What exactly are the Chronicles of Arax? How did this all come about? What is it?
A basic synopsis is what you like a basic synopsis of the books?
Yeah, elevator pitch.
Okay, elevator. That's the hard. This is where I'm not a natural salesman. That's where I struggle with my books. The Chronicles of Arax. Think of a fantasy medieval world, basically with primitive technologies. Think of the Roman Empire, but with different species on their planet. So you have gargoyles which can fly, which changes ancient warfare quite a bit. It's a conflict between humans and gargoyles that's been going on for thousands of years. And at the time of the story. There's the biggest thing that has changed your world and threatened everything is that humans. There's a group of humans in the north that have made an alliance with gargoyles, and now they threaten to conquer everything. Having a combination of humans and gargoyles are threatening to conquer the whole world. In the story is the main character Taran Caliph, and the biggest problem with the the usual trope that you always use in fantasy novels is always start off as a farm boy. And the reason you always start off as somebody on a farm boy is because in a medieval setting, most people work farms. That's like 80% of the population works farms. So his father is sending him away to be an ambassador, or to be a scribe to an ambassador to a faraway city that was an old friend of his father's. and he gives him a sword, and it has magical properties to it. He doesn't really understand a lot of this, and so the story begins, and he basically gets caught up in all the politics and the coming war between humans and gargoyles. He meets a bunch of colorful characters. And a group of them, which are people from Earth. There's people from an advanced future from Earth who have been stranded and stuck on their planet with advanced technology. So trying to think of like either Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica or maybe Star Wars or somebody with advanced technology stuck on a primitive fantasy planet. And those are just side characters. But all these different characters all come together in this great war that transpires across this planet. Trying to bring that down to a few words for a sales pitch, that's where I always struggle with.
It's okay. It's okay. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get. So you're doing fine. But this is a very intriguing storyline, intriguing series, and I love the cover. The cover is fantastic.
Yeah, so I had a friend of mine I used to work with, and I had when I first put these books for publication, the first cover idea I got, but they gave me back, and it was like a terrible. I didn't really fit the story at all. What I described, and he said his cousin, who's did some cover work for some Marvel projects as well as a few other artist work. He does a lot of covers. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if he'll do it. So his name's Carl Moline. He lives in Florida, and he's done all of my covers. I have one more to go with him, book 7, and my other series is more like a traditional fantasy covers. It's kind of like a bit more the traditional stuff. That this is all very. Each of the books has like a scene from the book is on the cover. That's usually in the story, except for book 6 is more of a symbolic cover story. But they all have this very similar art covers. Well, each one is very unique. It's all because of his creativity. I give him a few ideas, and he just goes with it from there. And being an artist, I'm not an artist. I can only draw stick figures. So I think being an artist he has the same problems I have with writing. He has to take it. He can only go either the inspiration's there or it's not. So sometimes I have to wait a long time for him to finish a cover because it has to be like he just has to feel it, I guess.
Well, they look really good, and that brings us to our next one here, Freeborn. So what is this Freeborn series all about?
Okay, when I was in the middle of rewriting books 1 and 2, I had a dream or something. I had some idea popped in my head, and I got up and I just writing details down. And so the idea of Freeborn, it's funny, the dream I had, I'm trying to remember what it was. It has nothing to do with Freeborn now as it stands, but it inspired my ideas for this book. And I always watch stories about magic or movies about magic, and I always drive me nuts as far as like, well, I don't know what rules of magic. Sometimes some character can do this, the next phase doesn't do it at all. And a lot of the stories about magic, people send around like, oh, the people have magic, they're being oppressed by the world around them. I'm like, well, I try to think of a medieval setting. If people had magic, then they would actually rule the world. And so I made this fictional world where those who have magic, it's passed on genetically, of course, and then so they would so whoever controls their medieval world, they would garner the power into themselves. So the kings would have multiple powers of magic, and the people below them have less. And I go, it's got to make it so you define what it is. I made magic where it's manifested in specific abilities. So like in the main character, his father is a lightning lord, which is a very powerful magic, so he can cast lightning and level an army. But in the backdrop of this world, I made it's called Freeborn because the main character, Ethan, he is born immune to magic. So magic has no effect on him. But he also can regenerate like Wolverine could, and then he's also pretty strong, and he learns things quickly. In the story, I have him go through a portal into the Old West, and he stays there for several chapters, and he comes back. But when he goes there, he's not magic. He could die there. He can't regenerate. All of his power doesn't exist on Earth. And then he comes back. And the whole point is in this whole story is that if people with magic ruled the world, they would become oppressive. And that's his whole point. Though his father's a good man, all the other kingdoms around them are, they have magic as people. People have concentrated power unto themselves, and they're wicked. And so he's freeborn because he wants to be. He doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want people to kneel to him, and he doesn't want to kneel to anyone else. He just wants to live his life freely and wants everyone else to feel the same way. And so in the story, you follow his journeys, and you find out there's more to his destiny than just living his life freely for himself. It's about everyone else. And there's also his opposite number, which is the only way he can achieve his destiny. And that's really the backdrop of that story. It's more like you see somebody who's immune to magic in a world where everyone has magic rules the world. But he's, to them, he's a danger to them because he can kill any of them because he's immune to magic. They can't harm him. And that's why he's a threat to their very existence and their social order.
Well, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention. So, very impressive cover. Not only that, you take a character back into the Old West. The Wild West, yeah. That's really good stuff. I'm a fan of Westerns. I'm a fan of certain things in certain genres. So I dig it, man. Once again, I hope the person who's watching or listening to this digs this episode of And I Quote with indie author Ben Sanford on this episode. Do not forget to like and share this with every single person that you know. And if you're watching us live on a replay, we thank you for being with us. If you have any questions for Ben, let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. We'll take those from there. Have there been any special memories for you from being at book signings or other events, whether you're there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
There was a Comic-Con in Hagerstown, and this one young girl came by, and I guess she'd been by early. I don't remember seeing her earlier in the event. She came back around later, and she brought her dad with her. And he goes, "Is this what you wanted?" And she goes, she just nodded, and she bought all the first 6 books for Rax. I guess she loves reading, and they're going to read them. They've been reading a lot. They've been reading together, and a lot of people have bought a lot of the books. But I was like, I guess in her eyes, I'm thinking in my mind, like they're going to read them together as a family. That was like, I don't know. I haven't heard back. I don't know how they enjoyed them or not. But it's probably that moment really stood out for me. I thought the Rax books are like, of all the there's a lot of adventure and action, storyline, world building. I get very in depth with the politics and the armies and the movement of troops, but it's the interpersonal relationship between the characters, and a lot of it's family oriented and friendship, true friendship. And so hopefully, I'm just trying to see through her eyes if she can live hopefully with her father and truly enjoy those books. So, but I don't know. We'll see. I promise I'm still getting my website up and working so I can respond to comments. But that was I would like to hear the feedback and how she enjoyed it.
Rock on, man. Well, yeah, I hope that you hear from them and that they are enjoying these series of books and all that good stuff for sure. Wish you nothing but success moving forward, good sir. I do want to let you know, and the person who's watching or listening to this episode of And I Quote, let them know that And I Quote is indeed hold on a second. Wrong graphic. Start that over again. We are powered by Pod Decks. Now, Pod Decks are what is known as the hottest new tool for podcasters looking to have more meaningful conversations or gamify their podcast, if you will. You simply shuffle up the cards, you ask a question, you let the content roll. You can get yours today at poddex.com and use that promo code Ryan10. That's RYAN10. Ryan10 for 10% off your order. Do not miss out on that opportunity. So Poddex wants to know, what would be your best day ever, Ben Sanford? What do you think?
My best day ever?
Yeah, could be anything.
I'll be beyond the realms of reality, or what?
No, yeah. I mean, if you want to stick with reality or maybe outside of reality, it could be anything. You can interpret this question however you wish.
I think, give me all Superman's powers, but let's go to the more realistic thing is like, if I would love to see if people would. I'd love to see it be a bestseller, even if I didn't make a penny off them. If people just love them, if people like the stories, I think that would probably be. Because I had this I had this discussion with the guy who does my covers, Carl, and we're talking one time. I was talking about the things that are immortal. Everything we do on this earth, most of it's going to perish away. Your family and your children and all that might be a continuation of your line, but I think the things that you create, the things you do to change the world will last beyond you. That's more of your chance of immortality. If you create something that makes somebody else's life happier or enjoyable. You look at George Lucas, right? I mean, if he dies tomorrow, I mean, his Star Wars lives on in people's memory. Star Trek was Gene Roddenberry. Tolkien has been dead for how many years, but people love Lord of the Rings. So that's your. So you look at back in ancient civilizations, you look at the Greeks, the Romans, or the Egyptians, whoever. Sometimes the playwrights, their stuff has been lost to time. We got a few of things, but the people who made a lot of those sculptures are still alive today. We don't remember the people's names, but we see the art, the beauty of it, and it's still immortal. It still continues on. So they might have had great wealth and fortune. It came and gone, but no one will remember that. But people will remember what they did, and that's probably. But I would love to have it so people can enjoy these stories the way I plan them to be in my mind. So.
Rock on, man. By the way, Aubrey is here in the chat. She's giving you a round of applause and heart emoji. So she appreciates what you just said about that. So good to see you, Aubrey. Hope everything's well in your neck of the woods there, superstar. We love Aubrey. She's a good friend of the show, good friend of the channel. So don't get me wrong on that. Poddex is curious, though. What are you most excited about right now? Could be anything. Could be about an upcoming book. Could be about an upcoming event. Could be anything at all.
Probably finishing this series. This has been since I was a kid working on this book, and now I'm on book 7. I'm halfway through it. It's going to be done in the next 6 months, and I can basically take this big mess I have in my office and take most of the stuff and get rid of it or put it boxed away because I have sticky notes everywhere from this book, so many details that it's driving. Then I can just concentrate on Freeborn and finish that. But obviously finishing Iraq's book 7, and I'm almost there.
There you go, crossing that finish line. It's within his grasp, as one might say. Poddex is curious though. What's your recurring nightmare? Could be anything.
Oh, probably it would be finishing a book and losing it, having to rewrite it. It's like, I guess I think it was, who was that English playwright, Milton? He wrote. I remember reading some in English class. I didn't really enjoy it back then because it's all back in the style of writing back then. But Milton was a famous playwright, British playwright. I guess most of his key works he did, it was all a piece of paper. He wrote it, and I guess right before he went blind, his dog. He's about to go blind, and his dog took it and grabbed it and took it into the fireplace or something. It caught on fire and all burned up. And then he's going, so he had to do the rest of it from memory, and he had to have people help him write it. So probably losing like a book after you've wrote it would be like a nightmare. Yeah. Once it's part, okay, you got a couple. It should be good to go. You got a copy of it, man. If you lose it after all that, because that's how many years of work, right? It's all gone.
Boy, yeah, losing a story you just wrote and put your heart and soul into. That would be a very tough thing to overcome and a challenge for one. Goodness gracious. Boy, that would be terrible, going up in flames. But if there was a sandwich that was named after you, what would be on the sandwich?
Oh, the problem is I look at some of the bad things I eat, and they really don't belong in a sandwich. The problem with that question is, like, I probably want to make a sandwich of stuff I'd want to eat. So it'd have to make it of traditional stuff in the sandwich, kind of like an Italian hoagie, but instead of salami with turkey, and maybe lots of mayonnaise. But if I wanted to make a sandwich of the crap I eat, I mean, shoot, Coke Zero and Tootsie Rolls, and throw in some chicken breast. I don't know. It'd be kind of a bad combination, though, I think. Yep.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. Not going to argue that point, but hey, crazier things have happened in this world that we live in. What technology do you wish existed that doesn't as of yet?
I have it in my Iraq's books because the Earthers bring them with them. There's a organic tissue regenerator. So basically, you put it on somebody, and it basically analyzes what's wrong with someone, and it can uses people's own genetics and re-heals them. So if someone's missing a limb, they can regrow the limb, an eye. Your organ's got to be fixed without even just naturally heals you. So basically, it's kind of like a free healing device. I wish we had that.
Totally. That could definitely help a lot of people in need. So positive thoughts, positive vibes on that piece of technology coming to light or coming to life in some way, shape, or form within the future. But I do want to take this opportunity to say thank you to Ben Sanford for being our guest on this episode of And I Quote. Ben, it was great talking to you. You've done so much. You've done an incredible job. And the person who puts together your covers is just flipping magnificent. My gosh. I would hang those as a poster if I had them. I would probably hang that first cover we saw earlier today on my wall. It looks freaking awesome. But if someone wants to know more about you and the incredible things that you're doing, where can they follow you on social media?
I have a website, but I'm still struggling getting the responses on it. I'm still working out the how to respond to comments. It's stenixpublishing.com. If you look up, it's just STENOX.com, and a lot of that stuff is on there. It shows all my books are on there, upcoming events. If not that, I also have an Instagram account also called Stenix Publishing.
Fantastic. Well, I thank you for being with us. I'm going to talk to you here in just a moment. Once again, thank you to Ben Sanford for being our guest on And I Quote. I'm going to be talking to you here in just a moment here, Ben. My name is Ryan of And I Quote channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and personally at RyanRPM5. Follow us across all forms of social media simply at And I Quote channel. The links to where you can follow myself and our guests for this week, Ben Sanford, are located in the description of this episode. So check out the description, click on those links, follow us on social media so you can keep up to date with everything that we got going on. Also, our goal is to reach 5,000 subscribers on this YouTube channel by the end of the year of 2024. Help us get there. Once we do, we're going through a great big celebration. It's going to include special giveaways that you, our incredible viewers / subscribers, are going to be eligible to win. We also have merch that's on sale right now. We got shirts, we got hoodies, we got stickers, we got coffee mugs, we got posters, we got throw pillows, a whole bunch of other great things. Next stop on the Comic-Con tour is going to be July 26th through the 28th in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for Shore Leave 44. Find out more information at shore-leave.com. Get your passes, meet us there, see us there, say hi to us, take selfies with me. There's going to be a great lineup of guests, great lineup of indie authors and publishers and all that great stuff. Also, if you're looking for some really great books, you got the Robot Galaxy series written by our good friend Adina Mignona of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. These are books for all ages, saving the galaxy one glitchy robot at a time. But if you're looking for more hard sci-fi meets AI intrigue, check out Lunar Logic, also written by our good friend Adina Mignona, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can buy directly from the author at adinam.com. So visit her online, check out her books. Definitely check out Ben Sanford's books because he's got a great amount of stories to tell, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to bring us in the future. Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of And I Quote. Like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when our videos go up or they go live. And remember, life is better when reading. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Choose high-flying action. Choose death-defying escapes. Choose spine-tingling thrills. Choose nail-biting intrigue. Now's your chance to choose the adventure. The Captain Hawkland Adventures. Available on Amazon.com. You've worked hard and written a great book. Now, it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasmafire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasma Fire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
Good morning! Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.